Good afternoon, everyone. As we are letting everyone get in, my name is Andrew Spar. I'm the Vice President of the Florida Education Association. We're going to get started in just about 10 seconds here as we let everyone join and connect a little bit longer. So again, my name is Andrew Spar. I'm the Vice President of the Florida Education Association. We welcome you to this press conference. We are going to start momentarily. Before we do, I just want to kind of make sure everyone has some logistics worked out here. We are going to go through some comments at the beginning. Once those comments are done, we will open it up to questions. In order to get into the queue to ask a question, we ask that you raise hand. For those of you not familiar with Zoom, at the bottom of the screen, you will see an area where it says participants. If you click on participants, at the bottom of participants is a option to raise your hand. And so we would ask at that time that you raise your hand at the appropriate time. And we will go from there. So again, my name is Andrew Spar, Vice President of the Florida Education Association. We are going to have a short agenda at the beginning with some speakers related to the lawsuit. Once that is done, we will open it up to questions. You can click on participants at the bottom of your screen, and at the bottom of that list, you will see the ability to raise your hand. You will use that feature in order to get into the queue, and we will call on you in that order. And with that, I'm going to introduce the President of the Florida Education Association, Mr. Fedrick Ingram, a band director from Miami. Fedrick?
Good afternoon, and thank you all for being here. We appreciate your time. We're going to try to expedite as quickly as we can. We've called this press conference together to talk about something that is going on here as it relates to reopening schools in the state of Florida. This morning, the Florida Education Association, along with a number of other named plaintiffs, filed suit in the 11th Circuit Court in Miami this morning, seeking to overturn Richard Corcoran's emergency order forcing school campuses to open. Several FEA members from various parts of the state are named plaintiffs. The lawsuit seeks to return control to where it belongs, to locally elected school board members and superintendents. Just last week, Governor DeSantis said that schools would not be penalized if school campuses were not open 5 days a week. If that is the case, the emergency order needs to be rescinded. This lawsuit does not seek to interfere with local school district plans on reopening. We believe that decisions such as how and when to reopen schools are best made at the local level. Today, we are joined by a number of attorneys from our organization and others. We are also joined by two national affiliate presidents, the president of the National Education Association, Lily ESKELSEN-Garcia, whom you'll hear from a little bit later, and president of the American Federation of Teachers, Randi Weingarten. And you'll also hear from her a little bit later in the press conference. Let me just give you a little bit of background. 10,500 new COVID cases today. Statewide, we have a 14.74% positive rate. That is 14 plus days over an 11% positive rate here in the state of Florida. And only 4 of the last 14 days have had less than 10,000 new cases. 90 deaths, new deaths reported today. Total deaths over 5,000, total COVID cases 360,000 plus. That is the backdrop in which we have an executive order that says we must have a brick and mortar option in our schools. We believe that that is reckless. We believe that it is unconscionable. And we also believe that the executive order is unconstitutional. The first premise is that the Florida Constitution says that we must have a safe school system. That is written in the Florida Constitution. We're going to talk about the due process and capricious and arbitrary nature in which this was filed. And we have also named in our suit the governor, Ron DeSantis, the Commissioner of Education, Richard Corcoran, the Florida DOE, the Florida Board of Education, and the Miami-Dade County Mayor, Carlos Jimenez. Our plaintiffs are Broward teacher Stefanie Miller, Ladara Royal, an educator in Orange County, Victoria Dublino Jimenez and Andres Jimenez, education staff, and parents in Pinellas County, and Mindy Festge, a teacher and parent in Miami-Dade, bringing this lawsuit forward. And so let me be clear, before we hear from our plaintiffs and before we hear from our national presidents, no one wants to be back in a classroom and reopen our school buildings more than educators. We are teachers. We are first grade teachers and kindergarten teachers, and we're counselors and band directors and coaches. That's what we do. That's what we live for. That's what we've given our lives to help kids and communities and families. But we want to do it safely, and we don't want to put people at risk. There is a known risk that has to be mitigated by our state government before we can enter our brick and mortar schools. We want to start school on time. We don't want delays. We're advocating for schools to start with distance learning to protect our communities, our students, and our educators. Once the rate of infection is under control and falling, and we have the resources to safeguard our school families, then and only then should students return to brick and mortar schools. This is where we are. This is what we're doing. And this is why we should be preparing our lesson plans, getting ready for school. But unfortunately, the reopening of the state of Florida has been reckless. It has not gone in the way that it should. The rates of positive COVID cases continue to rise. Our ICU beds continue to be maximized. Our hospitals are getting to the point of exhaustion, and we cannot put our public schools in peril. Without further ado, I want to introduce to you our first named plaintiff, Mindy Festge. She's a teacher and parent in Miami-Dade County. Her son has a compromised immune system. Her husband is also a teacher in Miami-Dade County. Mindy?
Thank you, Fed. I just want to say that, as a teacher, as an educator, my husband's an educator, like Fed said. We have our youngest son who was diagnosed a little less than a year ago with a chronic digestive disorder and an autoimmune disease that, attacks him, his own body attacks himself. And so, even though if my son did not return to a brick and mortar school, my husband would have to. And so, having the chance of bringing anything home to pass it on to my son, expose it to my son, is very dangerous. And, this is just from my standpoint as a parent and as an educator, but I know many of my colleagues who feel the same way, that they themselves may not be, have underlying health issues, but their children may, or their spouse may. And so this is something that I truly believe we need to make sure that we open virtually so that all of our children and all of our family members are safe. And so that's my biggest concern.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mindy. Next, I'm uniquely honored to have the president of the National Education Association, President Lily ESKELSEN-Garcia.
Thank you so much. I don't want to repeat everything that Fed said, but it's just eerie what we're hearing on the state level and what we've been hearing on the national level. The command of Governor DeSantis to reopen all Florida schools before it's safe is reckless, it's unreasonable, it's unnecessary, and it is a false choice to either keep schools closed, stop learning, or open them unsafely. There are places all over the country. In fact, there are places all over Florida that are planning some very creative ways to deliver education services to students during this crisis. It's not perfect anywhere, but we know we can get through this if we support each other in making sure that we put safety first. It might look very different in a community depending on the infection rate in that community. But this order that just mimics Betsy DeVos and a federal edict, you will open all schools all day, all week, all students sitting shoulder to shoulder, no matter what doctors say. That's asking us to sacrifice our students and their families, educators and their families. ¿Y por qué? ¿Por qué tan prisa y nada de un plan? Why all this hurry without a plan to keep people safe? No tiene sentido para nada. It makes no sense at all. And as Fed said, we're teachers, we're educators, we want our kids back. We do not like teaching on a video call. It is not fun. But this isn't about fun. It's that we want to open schools safely. And it also is because we don't want to make the pandemic worse. If you do this wrong, the school becomes the germ factory. It becomes the super spreader. It becomes the source of a new surge in your community. And we know which communities are going to be hit the hardest. Black communities, Latino communities have been devastated by this horrible pandemic because they are too often and shamelessly our poorest communities. Our schools in our poorest communities shamefully have been so underfunded that they are more likely to be overcrowded, to have poor ventilation systems. They'll have less money for disinfectant, for face masks. They won't have a school nurse for all those health screenings, all the things that the Centers for Disease Control say that you have to have if you're going to open a restaurant safely, let alone an elementary school. We also know that students in those communities are more likely to be cared for by a grandparent, a very high-risk population. The explosion in infections will happen if we do this wrong, because once again, a politician denied how complicated this could be. They just said, just open the schools and just do it. They didn't listen to the doctors and the scientists. They're not listening to the teachers and the support professionals who know the names of these kids. There is a time and a place and a way to do this safely. Why isn't that an option? I believe it's because doing it safely will cost money. What concerns us as educators, the reason that the Florida Education Association is filing this lawsuit along with other people who care, is because we don't want it to cost a life. It's not too late to do this safely, to have a plan. And we pray that the courts will agree to put safety and put lives first. Thanks, Fed.
Thank you. Thank you very much for being here. We are honored to have you. Next, we will have an educator from Orange County who has a compromised immune system, forced to choose resigning or teaching and risking his own life. Ladara Royal.
Good afternoon. My name is Ladara Royal, and I serve as a resource teacher and dean at Southwest Middle School, located in Orlando, Florida, within the Orange County public school system. I am compelled to stand alongside the FEA, these wonderful teachers and parents, as we beseech the courts to order the safe reopening of schools. In my opinion, the political-sized executive order given by the governor and the Commissioner of Education to reopen schools without regard to the safety of teachers, administrators, and students is irresponsible, unjust, and the least criminal. I stand up for myself, an African-American male with asthma and an autoimmune deficiency, which we know both factors alone place me at high risk and dire consequences. I stand up for my elderly teachers and colleagues, both in my school district and across the state. I stand up for the Orange County Public School Board members and other school board members elsewhere who were cornered and bullied into making decisions to reopen school no matter what, despite the risk of lives that may be lost. I stand up for educators who are single parents who have no other choice but to risk their lives so they can feed their own children. I stand up for the Title I schools and minorities from lower income communities of which this order exploits. And furthermore, I stand up for the lives of all teachers and school workers and students in this state. I would never imagine while answering the divine call of being an educator could one day place my life in jeopardy and at risk. As a former history teacher, I often inform my students that the duty of the elected officials is to do what is right and good for the community of which they serve. We expect our government leaders to be just and righteous. Righteousness, if you will, is the character of one who consistently does the right thing, and righteousness is only suited for those who dare to serve on a higher moral and ethical ground. So I encourage every teacher, support staff, parent, every school board member in our school districts, stakeholders, and the communities at large to join us in this cause. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ladara. We appreciate you and what a compelling story you have. Next, we're going to introduce a Broward teacher, Stefanie Beth Miller. Just by way of background, Stefanie had COVID and was on a ventilator for 21 days. And she is one of ours. So thank you, Stefanie, for being here, and thank you for being a plaintiff.
Thank you. As you said, I've been teaching in Broward County for 22 years. I really have no underlying health issues other than asthma that I get seasonally or with the flu. And it just so happened I was getting over a flu and was asthmatic when COVID broke out. So by the end of March, I caught COVID. 21 days on a ventilator, 2 months in the hospital, 8 days in rehab, and now I've been home for 6 weeks getting physical therapy, occupational therapy, and speech therapy daily. It's a long journey. I don't wish this on anyone. I, of course, want to go back to teaching, but it needs to be safe. There's no way that children can sit in their seat for 6 hours wearing a mask and not feel the stress of this situation. No, teaching online is not optimal, but it's best to keep teachers, personnel, families safe. I have a long road ahead of me, but I'm determined to get better. And my reason for doing this is to protect our young and to protect other teachers and people that work in the school. Safety first, but of course education is important. We're gonna do our best to educate however we can and make this a positive experience for our students in a safe way. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Stefanie. We appreciate you being here, and thank you for your efforts. Godspeed to you. We lost one of our colleagues yesterday in Pasco County, a teacher to a battle with COVID. So, so thank you that you are here. Again, thank you for signing on. And we have one more speaker, and then we're going to have one of our lead lawyers right after this next young lady. But before she speaks, I want to let all of the media know on the call that we have two more plaintiffs that will be joining this lawsuit. The NAACP State Conference, President Adora Obianweze will be joining this lawsuit, and the National NAACP will also join this lawsuit. Their president is Derek Johnson. I want to thank Randi Weingarten for your help and having those conversations, and really you and Lily for leading this charge so we open our schools in a safe way through the national organization. Without further ado, the president of the American Federation of Teachers, Randi Weingarten.
Thank you, Fed, and I will take my mask off now. I came down to Washington today for the first time in a couple of weeks, and I am in a building that I'm not used to, and so the building requires that we wear masks all the time, and the building requires all sorts of other safety precautions. The airline that I was on today advertised themselves as making sure that they had HEPA filters, good ventilation. They made sure that everyone was wearing a mask. They made sure that all cleaning was done. My point in saying this initially is that these safeguards are being done by commercial interests. Why are these not the bottom line safeguards in every school in the nation? And these safeguards are being done when there are planes going into places where there is less virus. Why are we not doing in the United States what every developed nation did? No developed nation sent their school children back to school with this level of virus. And frankly, the fact that one has to sue a state to do what Texas just did last week, what California did last week, is mind-boggling to me. It shows a depraved indifference to human life that we are having this conversation in Florida right now. Florida has, as Fed just said, some of the most significant surges in the United States. And rather than actually dealing with it, rolling up his sleeves and being the governor that I know Ron DeSantis can be, he is in intense denial. I don't know if it's Trump that's breathing down his, whispering into his ear. I don't know if it's Betsy DeVos. I don't know who it is. But number one job, which is embedded in the Florida Constitution, is that a governor, a Department of Education secretary, every school board member, every official in Florida has the sacrosanct obligation of keeping its people, their people, safe. Florida did this initially in terms of in March, in April, but something then happened. And first we saw it with our seniors and with nursing homes, and now we see it with our kids and our educators and all of their families. The bottom line is no one should have been forced to take this lawsuit. This lawsuit is about trying to get the governor, the mayor to actually do their job and keep people safe. And as Lily said, not pit or make a false choice between education and safety. Last thing I'm going to say is this. This is why the NAACP is joining us, because everyone understands that someone has to step forward to keep people safe. Someone has to make sure that the Florida time-honored tradition of letting localities make this decision has to be honored. Someone has to make sure that our kids' education is not pit against their safety, and their teachers' work is not pit against their safety. We want to be in school, but we want to make sure that schools work for kids, that they feed kids, that they have the resources that they need. That requires us to tackle the virus first and foremost. It requires real plans and imagination as to how to make them happen, and it requires resources. I'm honored, Fed, that we are on this lawsuit, and we will do as a national organization. I'm honored that we are here today. We are not on the lawsuit. I'm honored that we're here today, and we as your national affiliate will do everything we can do to make sure not only are our members safe, but our community safe, and that we do not lose a generation of children because of the denial and the recklessness. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Randy. I appreciate it. Thank you for your passion and your effort to help the 150,000 people who we represent in the Florida Education Association, but bigger than that, the 2.8 million children who will attend our public schools one way or another once we open. Before I bring out our lead attorney for today, I want to say that there are a team of attorneys that are on this Zoom call: Ron Meyer, Mark Richard, Kendall Coffey, as I mentioned before. Our general counsel at FEA, as Kimberly mentioned, and we have also the backing of the NEA and the AFT's legal department as well. So wanted people to know that. Without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Kendall Coffey so that he can give you just some legal expertise about the lawsuit in terms of the counts. Okay, Kendall? You're on mute, Kendall. Andrew, can you help us out? There we go.
Okay. Thank you very much for the privilege of participating in this, frankly, momentous case. I think all of us know just how extreme the facts are. The first 21 pages of our lawsuit are a chronicle of horrors. They are tragically a chronicle of undeniable truth. From the reality of what all of us are facing in this community, in this state, in this country, we talk in terms of three legal theories. The first, expressed most simply, is the constitutional right in Florida for students to have a safe and secure educational home. And to be sure, that is not available under the science, under the evidence, under federal criteria. That simply is not available yet. And until it is, it would be, and we think we're very solid on this, a constitutional violation. The second claim goes to the order itself, which is, first of all, confusing. I suspect I'm not the only one that found it confusing. And you think about the importance of something like this being so clear, and yet it is not, and that is a constitutional violation. Fundamentally, it is considered arbitrary and capricious and irrational because it is not based on solid information and evidence. A decision maker has to have a reasonable basis for decision making. In this case, the emergency order completely ignores the CDC criteria, doesn't even try to explain them, and that is a constitutional violation. And most significantly, it ignores the information in its own files. Information as recently as May 28th that emphasize that schools are high contact settings. They're not set up for social distancing. And therefore, reopening has to be a locally driven decision, and there have to be local safe school plans, and there have to be local response teams, local partnerships, with all of the recognition by the Department of Education in its own files and in its own information. This needs to be locally driven. It threw all that to the side and said that they are now going to be a state authority which pushes locals out of the way. The third theory is that we need an injunction to prevent this from happening before it's too late, because if students or teachers and educators and workers in education are rushed back into school without the safety precautions in place, the damage that's done will be irreparable and potentially, in many cases, fatal.
Thank you, Kendall. We appreciate that. Before we open it up to questions and answers, I still see Andrew here, so I think he's going to facilitate that. What I want to do is let you know how we came to this. We surveyed our members and parents. Over 46,000 people have responded, and only 5% of educators think that workplaces will be very likely safe to open this fall. An overwhelming majority, 90%, are in opposition to opening schools 5 days a week at this time with our brick and mortar options. And lastly, 39% of our educators are considering leaving the profession this year. Let me repeat that. 39% of our educators are considering leaving the profession this year if their only option is coming back to the school campus. I also want to end with this. There's an educational village around us. That's cafeteria workers and bus drivers and paraprofessionals and security monitors, some of which of those folks are at work right now, preparing schools, trying to do the very best they can with very limited funds, with very limited materials and very limited support. They're putting their lives on the line right now. And so we need to do what we can for everybody in this educational village to be safe. Our teachers and support staff are slated to return in 2.5 weeks. Our students in about 3 weeks. So our teachers will go back into these classrooms at the very beginning of August to try and get ready for our students in professional development of some type. We've got to do something about this executive order because it is putting people in peril. I'm going to leave my comments there. Andrew and Sharon, I'm going to ask that you facilitate the questions and answers.
Sure, I'm going to get it started and then Sharon's going to take over. To raise your hand again, just click on participants at the bottom of your screen and then raise your hand. If you are on the phone, *9 will raise your hand. So *9 for those on the phone, and at the bottom of the screen, if you click participants at the bottom of the participant list, you will have the option to raise your hand. We will call on you and unmute you at that time, and I'm going to turn it over to Sharon to moderate that, and I'm going to jump.
Thank you, Andrew. The first question is Kayleen Belsha. I will unmute you now.
Thank you so much. This is Kaylin with Chalkbeat. This question is for Lily and for Randy. Certainly a lawsuit is one big tool that you can use to affect teacher safety around school reopenings. But I'm wondering what role you think teacher activism and potential labor action by teachers unions could play in the school reopening debate?
I'll jump in quickly. We are being very responsive to our affiliates all over the country. We have some of the tiniest little rural affiliates, and Randi and I are both national presidents for UTLA in Los Angeles, a merged local, and everything in between. And so they are, I'm telling you, all over the country, people are looking at whether or not good decisions are being made by people in very powerful positions. The places where where we have a lot of hope are places where those politicians, whether that's a school board member or a mayor or a governor, are putting the right people together. They've got the special ed parent, they've got the school nurse, they've got the third grade teacher. They've got the local health authorities. And where it's been done wrong is Florida, top down, taking orders from Betsy DeVos. So it's going to look very different across the country. And not everyone in the country has what Florida has in their constitution about opening schools safely, about having safe schools. So this made perfect sense for the Florida Education Association to say, you're in violation of our constitution. We're going to do whatever it takes to make sure that students and their families and educators and their families are safe. But we want people to understand that if we do this wrong, it puts the entire community at risk.
So you're not used to me actually being very short. I mean, I am very short, but I'm very long-winded. But let me just say, given the circumstances in the last few weeks and what we've seen in places like Arizona and Florida and other places, we can't rule anything out anymore. We have spent the time since April trying to figure out not whether, but how to reopen safely and how to ensure that our kids are not hurt and that they get what they need, particularly in light of the three crises that face them and their families: the health crisis, the reckoning with racism, and the economic crisis. But the recklessness that we've seen on the part of the president, on the part of Betsy DeVos, on the part of certain governors, mean that it is up to now teachers, other educators, families, parents, to do what's right for our kids and what's right for our communities. And that's what we're trying to do all across the country. Thank God there are several governors who see that and have tried to figure out how to put protocols and safeguards together, from Governor Newsom in California this week to Governor Abbott in Texas this week to Governor Cuomo in New York in a commission that I had the honor of sitting in. There's lots of different ways, but one has to focus on safety. And when you have this kind of surge in cases, we need to address that. That's first and foremost. Second is a plan, the resources. And if those things don't come together, you can't rule anything out when it comes to the safety and well-being of our kids and of the educators that teach them and that help make them soar.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We need to take a question from the chat box because it's being asked over and over. It's for the attorneys. Why is the Miami-Dade County Mayor named as a plaintiff or as a defendant, actually?
Kendall, you want to take that?
Yeah, and certainly this binder for declaratory relief action, I emphasize it's not blaming the mayors of either Miami-Dade County or other local top leaders around the state for anything that's happened, but they cannot be separated from this. In fact, the order itself refers to local departments of health, and the plan that put together refers to local driven data, local partnerships, local responders. So in light of the way it is structured, this will not be exclusive of the senior-most county officials. And of course, as we know, Mayor Jimenez, just like other situations where there is a final county decision maker, has issued a number of proclamations, emergency orders based on health issues involving the virus. So we already know that this function of being the foremost voice locally with respect to health and virus health crisis concern is held in the office of the mayor of Miami-Dade County. And again, we would suggest other counterparts throughout the state. That voice and hopefully that leadership is an essential part of the solution, including not only the way we've articulated it in our lawsuit, but also with respect to the basic structure that has been put forth by the Department of Education in Florida.
Thank you very much. And I just want to add, again, like Kendall said, he is the head public safety official in Miami. We filed in Miami. The epicenter of this virus is found in Miami. But we want everybody to understand that this executive order is statewide. And so we plan on engaging, again, on a statewide effort. But the named folks in Miami had to be the head public safety official, because this is by, for, and about public safety for us at the end of the day. Sharon?
Joe McLean, you're next.
Yes, Joe McLean, News4JAX, Channel 4 in Jacksonville. I wanted to ask you to, there's a significant population of families who want their students to be back in buildings, whether because of family necessity or I guess that they're not convinced that the virus is going to create much of a safety hazard. Can you say anything to that population of families who do want the option to send their children back to brick and mortar?
Our governor and our commissioner of education cannot ensure safety. They cannot ensure that these young people are not going to be spreaders, or that we're going to have super spread events. This is why you see cancellations of sports programs. This is why you see cancellations of assemblies and congregations. We cannot congregate more than 25 people in some areas of this state in a restaurant, or more than 25 or 50% in a particular bar. Reckless to be on a beach in congregations, but we believe that it's okay to pile hundreds of students right now in the epicenter of a virus where we cannot ensure health and safety for that child. What we're trying to do is keep these kids alive, and we're trying to keep their families alive, because again, these kids may be able to survive COVID. And as you heard from Stefanie, this is not an easy task for us, but one may, and what we do know, the New York Times article that came out last week said that if you're between 11 and 20 years old, then you may have the same viral contagion as an adult. And so if you live in multi-generational homes, that's an issue for us. And it's incumbent upon us to try and protect everybody involved in our public schools. That is inclusive of all stakeholders and all families.
Next, Joe, is this you also, Action News Jax, or is that someone else? Someone else. Action News Jax.
Hi. Great. Oh Lord.
Hello.
Are you there?
Hi. Yes, Action News Jax is separate. I know all of our names are kind of similar, but I'm we're a local news station in Jacksonville. My question, so I know that before the announcement was made today regarding a lawsuit, that there was already a petition up, and you guys have a lot of people so far. When I checked last, more than 15,000 people, and you've listed out exactly what you would like, what must be done before schools can reopen, and none of them are anything crazy. It all seems like this should be very basic things that are done before the school opens. So my question is, though, after you've received the number of people for the petition, I know that petition is for the governor, but after you've received those numbers, I don't think you'll have any problems getting them. what is the next step? And what happens if the governor just doesn't budge?
Well, we certainly hope that the governor is going to take a look at everything that's happening in and around him. We don't have this virus under control in the state of Florida. That's very obvious. We're leading the nation. We're winning a race that we should not be winning in terms of the viral spread, in terms of the positivity rates, in terms of ICU beds, and the impact on all of us. And so what we want the governor to do is enact a reasonable a reasonable plan. Right now, we got a slogan. We're going to open schools. That's a slogan. That's not a comprehensive plan. There's no thought process put behind it. And there's no money put behind that, because what we know is it's going to cost us more money to educate kids moving forward than it did in the past. We need testing, tracing, and isolation. We need clean buildings that have proper ventilations. We need to ensure that we can social distance in all of our schools. We need a mask plan that we have not instituted here in the state of Florida. We need to understand what reasonable accommodations are. If an adult cannot go back into a school or won't go back into a school, what happens with that teacher? All of these things we're asking the governor to consider. We're in fact, with this lawsuit, we're insisting that he consider. So we're going to push as hard as we can. We have the petition going, we have this lawsuit going, and our members are more active than they've been in quite a long time, because you see them at school board meetings, and you see them on different Zoom calls, and they're organizing themselves to mount up a campaign to push this governor to a right decision.
Next up, we have Colleen Wright.
Hi, thanks so much for this. This question is mostly for Mindy Festge. Mindy, I'm sorry, I had some technical trouble and missed the first part of what you said, so I'm asking this question without much context, but it seems like Miami-Dade and Broward, the superintendents in Miami-Dade and Broward have said that they're not going to reopen if conditions continue the way they are, with Miami and most of South Florida being in the epicenter of the coronavirus. And the Miami-Dade superintendent has also said that the school district is in compliance with the emergency order because it has a flexible plan. So it seems like Miami-Dade County might be in a different boat. So why is it so important to join this lawsuit, given those things that it seems like these counties are already saying that they're going to operate on their own and do what they think is best? And also just why call it Jimenez? I'm still kind of unclear. I know that the lawyer Kendall Coffey spoke, but why Jimenez is really roped into this. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Colleen. First of all, even if Miami-Dade does not open, there are 66 other counties in the state that my colleagues work for, and our students in the state attend. And, we have to make sure that everyone's safe. We cannot just isolate ourselves as an island by ourselves and not think of everybody else. So, just the fact that all 67 counties should be making sure that all of our families are safe, whether it's our education professionals' families or our students' families. That's the first thing. When it comes to Mayor Jimenez, he is probably one of the highest ranking local officials. We are the largest county in the state, and he has the ability to speak to health matters. And he has a considerable voice in the reopening of public schools in Miami-Dade County. And so, sometimes, people always say, as Miami-Dade goes, the rest of Florida goes. And, that has to come into perspective here. We are the largest county. We are the epicenter in Florida and in the entire country right now. And so I think, if he takes a stand, other mayors and possibly the governor will follow suit.
Mindy, let me just add to that as well. From Miami-Dade County, we have seen some very courageous steps by the superintendent down in Miami, along with their union president, Carla Hernandez-Matz. They seem to be joining together to ensure health and safety down in Miami. But remember this, if the superintendent does not open with a brick and mortar, he is in violation of the executive order. The executive order will come with punitive measures. It says that they won't qualify for the waiver for the FTE funds, and that may potentially restrict dollars coming from Miami-Dade County. So although we're seeing courageous steps, we're hearing all of the right things coming from Miami-Dade County for the superintendent, their school board, their union. They would be in violation of this executive order. And this is why it's so important for us to get this executive order thrown out, because there's a punitive measure that says if you do not have the brick and mortar option, then there are possibilities of punitive damages to the particular school districts, inclusive of Dade County. Sharon?
All right, next we have ARLY. Are you there, ARLY?
Yes, hi. Good afternoon. I was wondering if I could have a question answered in Spanish from Lily.
I believe she's still
Sure.
There she is.
Yes.
Sí, buenas tardes. Mi pregunta en español sería para Telemundo. Sería, ¿cómo esta orden viola la Constitución? Si nos puede explicar esa parte.
La Constitución en Florida es formado para garantizar un ambiente en una escuela de seguridad, que necesita estar saludable y seguro. Y este es contra de los órdenes del gobernador, quien dice, no importa si tenemos un plan para abrir y garantizar que esta es una escuela saludable para los pequeños y los grandes en este ambiente. Y este es peligroso y no es necesario.
Ok, ¿y por qué es lo que están pidiendo ustedes en esta demanda? Explíquenos. ¿Qué es lo que están pidiendo en esta demanda?
En esta demanda es muy simple. Solo es para poner fin a este orden, para abrir las escuelas por orden del Estado. Este es en las manos de cada distrito donde hay school board members con esta responsabilidad. Elegido para hacer este tipo de decisión, no el gobernador. No es en las manos de la gente que viven en las comunidades y la decisión es saludable, es seguro para abrir o no.
Muchas gracias.
Sí.
Lily, we have another question for you in Spanish. Brenda, can you hear me? Brenda, I unmuted you if you're available.
We'll come back, Sharon. Let's keep moving.
Yes. All right. Marlene Sokol is up next. Marlene, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. I'm here. Yeah, my first question, more of a housekeeping question, and I want to really thank all three teachers for stepping forward. For my story, could I please know the ages of the three teachers?
So if you're comfortable doing that, I don't know if that's in the legal stratosphere or just in the social stratosphere, but.
I don't mind. I'm 53 years old.
Okay, a speedy recovery. I really.
It's not a speedy recovery.
No, no, I don't mean it is. I'm wishing you a speedy recovery. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
That's what I meant, is for you to feel better.
Yes, thank you. I am.
Thank you. Mindy?
I am 51.
Okay, thank you. And Ladara?
I am 35.
Okay, thank you. And I have another question for Mr. Ingram, and I'm going to be a devil's advocate here because I know what you're asking for. It is life and death, and certainly it's not unreasonable, you know, for your members to be safe and for children to be safe. However, what would you say to families who desperately want their children to be back in brick and mortar school? And I'm not just saying because they need childcare, although in some households that is a compelling reason, but I'm talking specifically about the special needs child who was regressing, or the child who was struggling to learn how to read, and once they fall behind, they might never catch up. Because what you're asking for could take time. It could take months. It could take half the school year.
Yes, so thank you for the question, and I'm going to ask Randi to follow up behind this answer as well. I'll give you a very short answer. We have young people die from this virus. Young people die from this virus. I don't want this government this state government to play Russian roulette with your child, because it could be your niece, it could be your nephew, it could be your granddaughter, or it could be your own son or daughter. Let's keep these kids alive. Let's keep their grandmothers who have underlying issues. Let's keep the folks who have potential to have this potential virus from a kid who goes to school. There's so many unanswered questions while people are dying around us. We're leading the nation in COVID cases in the entire nation. To me, that is first and foremost. We will deal with the academics. We're not saying we're going to close schools. We're going to teach. We're going to teach as best we can with distance learning, with virtual school. We're going to put all of what we're asking for the government to do is infuse money into our state government so that we can deal with mental health services. We can deal with counselors, and maybe we have to do that through Zoom or through, some connectivity issues. This is not normal. And this is not hopefully not going to be our new normal, but something is very different about the times that we're in right now. And so the very people who are as vulnerable as they are right now will potentially be hurt even more if they are in schools. And so what we're asking for is just to give us some time and give us the funding and give us the support that we need to ensure health and safety for everybody. Randy?
Thank you, Fed. Some of us actually suggested that places, when they didn't have virus out of control, start slowly over the summer and start trying different kinds of things, particularly to see what could be done safely, what could be done securely. That's what we've been doing with childcare in places all throughout the country. See what works, just like we study what's going on in Europe and South Korea. You see the kinds of things that work, and you start with kids who are most vulnerable. There are things that we could be doing over this course of this month if one did not try to make this a one-size-fits-all 5-day-a-week, as if there was no virus routine that's going on in the state of Florida. What happens if you could put up tents outside schools? What happens if we could learn from what was going on in terms of childcare, what the things that we've done and how you slowly deal with and the kids who are most at risk? This is not an all versus none situation. This is, let's make sure we have real plans that focus first and foremost on safety, and then very slowly and gradually and responsibly work with the kids who are most at risk. But right now, let's be clear, every single district in Florida is violating an executive order if they try to do any of this. This is not about a false choice between kids and parents and teachers. It's about trying to make sure everybody is safe and we help all kids.
Thank you very much, both of you.
Thank you.
All right, Joe has a follow-up question.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to ask about the court process. The first day of school for many districts is coming up. It's just a couple of weeks away. What legal action or what is there anything that this lawsuit is going to do to make any difference this late in the summer?
Kendall?
Well, that'll depend on basically on the judge. I hate to give you such a lawyer's answer, but the lawsuit is filed. The lawsuit itself is not impose any limitations on whatever the governor or the Commissioner of Education can do. It's not, in effect, creates its own order or its own injunction. That's something that has to be secured from the judge. And what a judge would normally do in a case like this is call the parties in very quickly, try to make a determination of how to schedule and structure some kind of proceeding. But that'll depend on some variables. So I can't give you a timetable except to say that I think everybody's going to want to move on this as quickly as possible.
Is an injunction something you all are hoping for in this lawsuit? I'll just ask a follow-up.
Yes, one of the questions is an injunction.
Thank you. We have a question in the chat because Brenda couldn't get on. This is for Lily. What message can you give, Lily, to parents that this week are still deciding the option for their kids' education that school districts are offering? She'd like the answer in Spanish.
Oh, yo también. Yo quiero este respuesta en cualquier idioma. Este es un tiempo muy difícil. No hay nada simple. No hay decisión simple. Primero, estamos en esta situación y no es necesario. Estamos aquí por falta de decisiones sabios de los políticos. Pero estamos aquí y necesitamos hacer lo que necesitamos hacer. Y primero, es importante para cada padre para saber lo que está pasando en su comunidad. Es muy diferente en una comunidad muy rural, tal vez de distancia, que en Miami. Lugares muy diferentes, tú vas a tener opciones muy diferentes. Lo que sabemos es un orden del gobernador para tratar todos como es lo mismo, igual, es un error. Padres, pregunta a los directores de la escuela, de los maestros, del school boards en tu comunidad, ¿cuáles son las opciones? Porque va a estar muy diferente. Y yo no tengo una solo frase para decidir es eso o eso. Y este es el punto de esta demanda. Tenemos un gobernador DeSantis fingiendo que todo es simple y no es. Nada es más complejo que esta situación.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lily.
Sharon, let's take 3 more questions.
We have Bobby Calvin.
Yeah, hi, this is Bobby Calvin with the Associated Press calling. And thanks for doing this, by the way. I'm wondering what kind of repercussions do teachers and other staffers face if they don't show up at school? What guidance are you giving them? Should they have real and genuine concerns about their health, underlying conditions, for example? And how about those who might be so-called conscientious objectors?
So unfortunately, we haven't gotten much guidance from the state as to reasonable accommodations and what happens. And that's one of the things that I led with. You know, what happens when a teacher, can't go to school or won't go to school? Should they face, a loss of a job? Absolutely not. But we've gotten no guidance from the state. When in fact, we have 67 school districts with 67 different plans. They're all trying to put it together. They're all trying to do it in one way or another with not enough money. And what does not enough money mean? If we don't have enough money to social distance in the way that we should. Let me give you a couple of examples. Our public schools were made for social interaction, not for social distance. And so that means that we will have to have smaller class sizes. That may mean hiring more staff, hiring more teachers. I will remind everybody on this call that last year, we started the school year with 3,000 classrooms that did not have a certified teacher. That was our shortfall then. I'm sure that is going to be wider now. What happens when we need a substitute to go in and substitute teach for a teacher that has just been diagnosed with COVID? Do we quarantine the class? Do we quarantine the students or wing or feeder pattern? We've gotten no guidance there. We're simply saying in the state of Florida, not we, but our governor and our commissioner of education says that we must open schools and come up with a plan that is best for you with no guidelines, with no regulations at all. And so all of these questions that you're asking, I wish we had more definitive answers for them, but that is our whole premise in saying, why force people to have this brick and mortar 5 days a week option when as a state that we're not ready financially, we're not ready with the regulations around that, and we're certainly not ready with a lot of the infrastructure needs that we need in terms of soap and hand washing stations and sanitation services and deep cleans and how often we do that and how often we don't do that. That's going to cost money. And we haven't heard anything about funding from our government.
And I'm also wondering, what kind of training is the association demanding for teachers and staffers in their possible roles, in screening students for COVID-19?
So there are all kinds of educational programs that our nationals offer. Both the NEA and the AFT have really been saturating this country with best practices, with what we need to do, trying to educate our community and our allies, our partners all across this country. But what we would like is to work with the federal government. Unfortunately, Bessie DeVos gives us zero guidance. She should be dismissed out of hand as a commissioner of education simply because there has been nothing offered in the way of forward thinking, in the way of progression, and how we deal with COVID-19 going back to schools. Again, she's wrapped herself around the slogan, let's open schools no matter what. But again, there's no education behind that. We need to educate our family members. We need to educate grandparents and uncles and aunts in terms of redefining what hygiene looks like. In these countries like Denmark and Germany and South Korea, many of them have hand washing mandatory every hour. That's part of their national plan. We have not done any of that here in the States, and we're looking for those kinds of guidance. Sharon?
Anna, are you there?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, how are you? I had a few questions. When you guys filed the lawsuit, I asked the Department of Education for comment, and they said that if this lawsuit succeeds, it would also eliminate the provision that gives school districts the flexibility with the funding. I know that President Ingram has spoken a little bit about that, but they are claiming that superintendents were seeking this flexibility, right? If students are not in the classroom, if they study online, they wanted to have the guarantee that enrollment numbers would still be guaranteed under the funding formula. Is there a response, I guess, if regarding that specifically, the order, if this lawsuit wins, how would that affect the funding flexibility provided in the order?
So again, we think the order is unconstitutional. We think that the order oversteps the commissioner's bounds to say that you have to have this option, and there's also this penalty that if you don't have the brick and mortar option. So we believe if this is successful, it will actually give some latitude to our districts to be even more creative. If you don't have to have a brick and mortar option, then you can think out of the box. You can have hybrid models. You can have virtual learning where you can have television models where teachers are on TV. Those kinds of things that you can actually think out of the box if you're not searching for this brick and mortar option and then searching for teachers who will go into those schools and paraprofessionals who will go into those schools. So we think the exact opposite, that it will give latitude and it will absolutely have districts to free think about some creative options that are going on around the country.
That was the last hand that was raised. We have a question in the chat. How quickly will a hearing occur on the request for injunctive relief?
Kendall?
Can't predict that because obviously you've got the governor of Florida, you've got the commissioner of education, the mayor's office, very significant players. They're going to want to look at the papers, absorb some time. But we all know that in these kind of cases, if a court decides that the situation is urgent and that it doesn't require a lot of factual development, actually, we all know what the facts are. It isn't a case where you need depositions and a lot of endless discovery process. I think it's something that a judge could get to pretty quickly, but I don't want to impose a time frame before we have an initial session with the court.
That was the last question. And I want to remind reporters, if you have follow-ups or need something else from us, please contact Joni Branch. Her name and number are on the press release.
Thank you very much. Let me thank Ladara, Stefanie, and Mindy for your courage, and our two plaintiffs that could not make the Zoom call today. Let me thank the NAACP, the state conference, and the nationals. Let me also give a heartfelt thank you to the president of the National Education Association, Lily Eskelsen Garcia, for your support, and to the president of the American Federation of Teachers, Randi Weingarten. Thank you for your support. And let me end by saying this. We want to be in school. Our teachers want to be in school. Our cafeteria workers, our bus drivers, our secretaries, we want to be in school. We want to teach. Given the circumstances, Florida is in the vortex. Our state government, starting with our governor, has not gotten this virus under control. Maybe we went back too early. Maybe we were reckless with beaches. Maybe we were reckless with bars. Maybe we were reckless with restaurants, but we cannot be reckless with public schools. We cannot be reckless with children's lives. We cannot be reckless with those who pour their souls into these kids every day. That's unfair. That is an unfair way of thinking. That is an unfair way of treating people who simply want to care about our kids. Our public schools are opportunities and vessels of hope. We have to have faith that they're going to be safe and secure, and that they can be attained by each and every kid. And this lawsuit, unfortunately, is being brought on behalf of those kids, on behalf of those teachers, on behalf of those educational support professionals, and all of the folks who pour into these kids. And it is shameful in the state of Florida that it has to result to a lawsuit when we should be getting our classes together, doing lesson plans, doing pre-planning, going to professional developments, and encouraging our colleagues, hey, this is gonna be a bigger, better year than it was last year. Shameful that our governor has to get to this point, that we have not given the thought process and the comprehensive levels of thought that it takes to open our public schools here in Florida. We do not want to be the petri dish for the nation. We will not experiment on our classrooms to see if it is going to be a super spreader event or not. We are not going to stand for that, and we're not going to back down to a governor, to a commissioner of education, nor will we back down to the president of the United States or Betsy DeVos. I want to thank everybody for coming, and we will be available for press all day. Thank you all very much, and we'll see you soon.